Hey guys, Peter here to tell you about the latest from Thy Kingdom Will Burn, The Void and the Vengeance, out May 20th on Scarlet Records. This album has 9 tracks, 45 minutes in length, and this is the band's second full-length studio album. They are a Finnish melodic death metal band. When you look at the title of the record and you look at the design of the album, I think the two go perfect. They go hand in hand. This album is designed as the Void and the Vengeance. There are moments of Void where you feel like the album is more stripped down, more melancholic, more somber, and then there is the Vengeance when you feel like the album has a lot more heaviness, it's a lot more driven, it has more of a sense of direction. This style is really important in order for the album to work. It makes the record feel more engaging, it makes the album easier to digest because there is a pause every so often, or at least there is a change of movement every so often that makes you appreciate the songs individually and the experience up to that point. So this album has a very interesting style, a very interesting construction that makes the overall experience of the record come to life and makes the album a lot stronger. As far as the soundscape is concerned, the interesting element of the sound of this album is that it sounds like a Finnish melodic death metal band, but not necessarily like a band that you could point out saying that this record sounds just like this or just like that. That's not the case. I'm feeling like their DNA is coming alive on this record. They're understanding exactly what they want out of their sound, how they want to sound, and how they want to present that sound to the listener without losing where they're coming from, without losing their roots. They want to sound like a Finnish melodic death metal band, but they don't want to copy somebody else's sound and experience. And I feel like this record really achieves that point because you're listening to it and you're having these similar moments that you've had with other records, with other bands, but with their own unique twist, with their unique approach, with their unique style. And that is, to me, the key factor for a band that plays this genre coming from Finland. You want to sound that you're coming from that country, but not necessarily sounding like somebody else. The mixture on this record is really interesting as well because it's an album that's easy to digest. It doesn't have a lot of layers, it doesn't have a lot for you to peel. Everything comes as it is. It's easy to see exactly where the drums are coming from, what the guitars are doing, what the vocals are offering. It's an album that has simple elements and provides a simple approach for the listener, making the overall experience perhaps a little bit more direct and not necessarily creating unnecessary corners that makes the album redundant at times. It doesn't really offer value to the overall experience that the listener is looking for. I really enjoyed the drums on this record. They're not punchy, they're not powerful, but they pack enough sound to make the overall experience feel slightly thicker. They also spread out the footprint of the album and the footprint of the songs. They contracted a little bit on the moments or tracks that feel more melancholic, that have more of a downturn. But when the songs become more aggressive, when there is a little bit of an increase in intensity, you see the drums pushing these tracks out, creating a much larger base for them to work with. And that's pretty much their job throughout the entire record. They're never really there to lead the charge. They're never really there to jump into the forefront. They're somewhere in the middle of the pack, really enjoying that spot and making sure that everything else is comfortable around it in order for the sound to feel consistent, but not necessarily feeling too constrained in its existence. Now, the guitars on this album are really interesting because they have a lot of movement. You see what they're doing on the more downturn side of the record when you get more of that somber, melancholic approach with some acoustic guitars being involved, really stripping down the elements, really making them more bare bones and allowing that somberness to be risen for the atmosphere of the record to have a much higher impact. And then when they need to be a little bit more driven, a little bit heavier, but still with a melody behind them, you see the same thing happening. They start to move into the forefront. They start to direct the listener, creating a little bit of a path and allowing you to gravitate towards them because they are one of the beacons of this record. You're definitely going to walk away from this album talking about 2 points, the guitars and the vocals. I love the melodies on the guitars. I love the layers that they have, but not over layering them, making them simple, easy to understand, but still a little bit complex underneath the surface. Just enough for you to get a little bit more substance out of them from each and every single song, regardless of where the songs are, up or down, more melancholic or more aggressive. Now, the vocals feel perfect for a record like this because they are in the forefront. They're really leading the charge. They're not hidden. They're not in the middle of the pack. They're really straight up and they're commanding your attention. they feel very consistent from start to finish. There are some layers, there are some changes here and there, but overall the experience that you get at the beginning is going to be the same experience that you're going to get all the way through. So when you reach the end of the album, you're going to feel like the vocals stayed in a linear format from start all the way to the end. It's not the case, but that's the sensation that they give you, because that predominant style is the one that really controls almost every single song. In between that style, in between that approach, you're going to get some nuances. There's going to be some layers that's going to add some thickness to the sound, that's going to make the vocals feel a little bit heavier, a little bit more powerful. There's going to be some lower tones, some almost spoken word like approach that really changes the atmosphere more than anything else as far as these tracks are concerned. But once again, these are little moments here and there spread out throughout 9 songs and 45 minutes. The main consistent delivery that the album has is the one that's going to stay with the listener. But these key elements are important in order for the vocals to have a little bit more of a dynamic mechanism and not fall flat, because the album itself moves very well and you want to make sure that the vocals move well with it. All around, the best thing I can say about this record is that it's an enjoyable album for the fans of the genre. It's an album that you start to see the shape of the band come to life. It's an album that sounds like a Finnish melodic death metal band, but not like any other band that you've heard before. It has a unique fingerprint to them, and that is the best way to describe it. It's an interesting album, really well constructed, not overly produced. Like I said, it's not an album that offers too much. There's not a lot of layers for you to peel. What you see is what you get. Straightforward melodic death metal. As far as favorite songs are concerned, I want to start off Between Two Worlds. This is the opening track, and I feel like this is a great opening song, because when you look at how it's put together, when you look at the components within this track, you see the whole album come to life. This song has the two different sides of the album. It has the more melancholic, melodic side, really stripped down. You feel like you're in the gutter. And then it has the heavier, driven side with the melodies that really push you forward, that have all of that energy. This track has those two different momentums, and you're going to see them throughout the album. Sometimes one song pulling more towards one, sometimes another pulling more towards the other, and you have a few tracks that mix them really well. But if you have a song that has that sort of mixture, that has that sort of design, you really want to start off the record with that, because this is how you're going to set the expectations for the entire album. You want to grab the attention of the listener with the opening song, and I really feel Between Two Worlds is definitely a track that does that because of all the mechanisms that it offers. Next you have Nothing Remains. I love the drums on this track. The drums guitar combo is phenomenal. It feels very thunderous right from the get-go, and then you see the sound weaving. The sound starts to create movement, starts to move around. The thickness starts to drop. Then you have some moments where the thickness gets added to it. It's a track that has this forward movement, but at the same time it moves up and down as well. Also a little bit of an overall design within this track that you're going to see throughout the entire record. But it's such an engaging track because you could feel the power that it has, and at the same time you can feel the somberness that it holds. The vocals have some layers, and that works extremely well because this track musically is very dynamic. So you want to make sure there are some dynamic influences into the vocal approach so that the two elements moving at the same speed at the same time with the same ebbs and flows. And that's exactly how this track is constructed, how this track is delivered. Last but not least, Barren Land. Great intro. And the reason why I love this intro is not just because it sounds dark, it sounds somber, it sounds just, removed of life. It has this emptiness to it, but this beautiful emptiness to it in the melody that it holds. The reason I love this intro is because it has all of that, but then it carries that into the track itself. It's not like it's just there at the intro and then the song goes in a completely different direction. No, they use that as a calling card of what the track is going to be all about, because this song doesn't have a middle point. It's either up here in terms of the intensity, aggression, the movement that it has, how powerful, how heavy it feels, or is all the way down here in terms of how deprived of life it is, with acoustic guitars, with pianos, really feeling stripped down. And it never moves gradually from one to the other. It's just like in an instant, it switches from one to the next, so making the song feel like you're getting jolts of energy every so often. So it's numbing you on one hand and then it's jolting you back to life on the other. That is sort of the movement that this track has, and it's a movement that's really engaging and makes the song jump out of the 9 tracks, and definitely one of my favorites on the entire record. This is it. Thy Kingdom Will Burn with The Void and the Vengeance, out May 20th on Scarlet Records. Let me know your thoughts on the band, on the singles. Use the comment section below. I'll be reading those and getting back to you. Take care, guys.